footage of a location and there's something wrong with it, and we need a 2D fix to do it. And Photoshop gets open, some comping occurs, and you end up with a slightly altered but photoreal version of what you had going in that better fits the script. So the reference shot that we've got is this beach shot that you guys are downloading. A very nice piece of stock footage, but maybe there's some specific things that the director wants to change, and this location doesn't have everything that the story requires. So what we're going to do is take out the Broadway sign, do a sky replacement, change up this facade to be a different kind of store, and then we're going to add a distant amusement park just down the road a bit. And we'll take into account perspective, linear perspective, and we'll need to do some rescuing of certain elements, like we're going to keep that bird flying across because the director loves that. So we're going to rescue that and key that back on top. And a couple of other little things if we get time. I'm going to keep the bird. We're going to get rid of this set of barriers over here. And while they were at it, they said, well, I'd really like more of a contemporary looking fire hydrant. This red and yellow thing is really weird. Can we just get like a red one, a classic red one in there? So, some things to do. And we'll start with some Photoshop, and we'll end up in After Effects. So, first things first, one would look at the footage and kind of see what we're up against. If we take this sign out, there's going to be a slight ripple effect in that there's a big shadow from this flag that lands on this whole side of wall here. So we're going to need to paint that out and deal with it down here as well. This car that parks doesn't cross over any of the work that we're going to do. So actually we'll have a little section of live action. The rest of it could conceivably be painting. One thing I like to do when looking at a shot like this is to determine what masking will have to take place to make it continue to seem like a live action shot. Are we replacing 80% of the shot? Are we replacing 40% of the shot? Or just a little 10 and 20% of the shot? Either way, you're going to choose a pipeline that best fits that scenario. So if it's 80% of the shot and we're just matting in a small piece of live action, or somebody's walking, for example, or this car drives up, then I would look at it as it's a 100% replacement, and we're going to mat this thing back on top. We're going to make sure our seams are perfectly smooth. If it's more of a scenario where we're just changing a few things, then those just might be elements sitting on top of the video, and to which we add some grain to so it blends seamlessly with the original footage. So let's get started by, actually nowadays in Photoshop, we can file open up lots of different file formats, including movies, including video. So we'll start by finding a representative frame. And it may take a moment to do yours. It is, I think, converting it in this case from an MP4, which is why it took a little bit longer. I think an MOV will actually open faster. And when we do this, we'll have a timeline in Photoshop, which might be a new concept for some people. So I'm going to look for a frame where our flag shadow is minimized, so we have less painting out to do, and it looks like this is a pretty good frame for that. Nothing changes up here. The bird's not in this shot, so that's all good and well. So I'll just take this frame by hitting Command A to select all, Command C to copy it, Command N to make a new shot. And every time you make a new project or file in Photoshop, it gives you the resolution of the shot that's on the clipboard, because it knows that you're probably going to paste something into a new document. So I'll say Untitled, and that's fine, and paste it in there. At this point, basically, I'm done with the video, unless I wanted to find another better frame somewhere where I might blend some elements together, like, I don't know. Oh, actually, this is a good one too. This one has no shadow except up here of the flag, so maybe I'll copy that one too. That's about 11 seconds into the shot. So I'll copy that to the clipboard. Now I can close it. And I'll just paste this one on top. So I've got 2 frames here. Between the 2 of these, I can generate a pretty good clean plate. So I'll show you how to do that first. So I've got 2 images in a lockdown shot. The only way this works is if the camera doesn't move. And I mean even just like a little wiggle potentially is going to make these 2 shots not line up. But I'm going to essentially take the best of both worlds here and merge them together so that I have a clean plate. So I think if I look at this, when the flag is out here, the shadow's gone from this area. And when the flag is over here, the shadow's gone from this area. So between the 2 of these, I don't have to actually do any cloning work, which would be kind of a nightmare, especially down in here where I've got stucco and the shadow. That would not be fun. So what I'll do to blend these 2 together is to mask the top layer, put on a mask layer. And in this case, I'm going to punch a hole, so I'll get my brush tool, I'll switch to black, and I'll probably just use the default brush, that's fine, and just paint into that shadow. And there's a little bit of shadow to clone. But otherwise, that's clean, looking good. I could probably even leave that shadow if it's a still. We won't see it as a movement. So basically, I could merge this down. This is ready to go as a clean plate. And I'll call this amusement park. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and merge that down. This is my clean plate. Shadow's mostly gone. Now if I want to clone that out, I have the challenge, let me just do a quick copy up here, of trying to do it with a perspective change. You know? So I can clone from here, but when I get over here, the spacing between them is a little different. So I end up with that weird jaggy problem right there. I'm going to undo that. What I might better do is actually take a copy of neighboring stuff, and I'll take the larger stuff and shrink it. So I'm going to copy that up, copying it to the clipboard, pasting it on top, and patch it in this way. So now all it needs is a little scale. This is a lot better than cloning with a brush because you've got a big patch. It's very hard to detect the edge of that if we do it right. So I probably only need to scale it a little bit like that. And maybe I'll, with the erase tool, come on in and just refine my seam a little bit. I gotta be careful because I've got a duplicate, my spacing is wrong on the horizontal. See how I've got 2 real close together? So what I'll do is I'll set this one to difference, and when I stretch it, we'll be able to see where those line up. If I successfully line up the black, it should mean when I switch it back to normal, yeah, they're spaced out right. Difference just shows you the a very contrasty version of what's underneath and how the top layer is matching up to it. I still feel like I need a little bit of vertical adjustment there. Yeah, let's call that good. So that's pretty well painted out. I can merge that down. And now I got to deal with the sky. So to pull a sky key here is going to be a challenge, but I'll give it a whirl. Looks like blue is my candidate. However, as we get in here, we can see where a lot of that's not going to work. Any white buildings or reflective glass is not going to come along for the ride, but some of the important stuff, maybe I can even rescue some of these cables. More than likely, I'll be putting them back in manually. I got to remember that there's a little sign here because that's going to probably get keyed out, and so on. So a good way to start with this is to duplicate it and start doing levels on it so that foreground goes to basically black. And sky goes to basically white. And then fine tune from there. So that's probably as good as I'm going to get. So you see I got a lot of cables are missing. And I've got some schmutz up in the sky. But what I do have is a decent amount of range between my black and my white slider there. And I've got a tight but not crunchy edge on my buildings. So I'm going to say okay to that, knowing full well that it's not perfect. I'll invert it because white is going to be the keeper. And then I can start dealing with some of this stuff up here. So I can just lasso over all of the schmutz, send that to pure black. And then it gets to be a little like I got to actually make selections through here. So, boy, the screen space is at a premium here. So can't get too close. Just fill with white. Come in and make a better selection here after I know more. And it's very hard to look at this and tell where the better selection is going to be. So let me show you a way while you're looking at this to see what you've really got. Turn on RGB and then turn on the alpha. And anything with a pink overlay here, and it's going to be hard to tell some of the time because there's actually that same color, is image, right? So the red is part of the mask. Now if I start painting into the mask, in this case I want to switch over to white, and I want to make, I think I'm going to need a hard brush for this because I don't want to see a big soft mistake showing up. Do something like that. Get this down to scale, and I can start painting in the things that got missed. You know, highlights on things. In some cases I might just be better off trying to do marquee selections through some of this, but yeah, well, a lot of this. I'll do these signs because they're small. Oopsie. Probably draw them as fast as I could use a pen tool. Select them. I don't know. Okay, so those guys are keepers. Car's keeper. All right, here's a building. Definitely needs to get filled back in, and so on. Thinking that's glass back there. Sometimes me and a tablet will be quicker than doing other stuff. Just want to make sure that there's no holes in our buildings. Okay, so here's some definite problems. Here. There's lots of little things sticking up on buildings usually. The key is likely to lose them. Oops, these big transformers up here. I think this is where manual decision making beats the key, right? Because the key doesn't know what we're looking at exactly. I'm going to paint out my bird because we don't want him in there. So exchange to black and make sure he's not part of the selection. And here's where I got to get rid of my sign. Sign's not going to be super easy because we got a little overlap over here on the red roof. So I'll just come in with my lasso tool, kind of zoom in. Just take it out in big clumps here. Fill to black. Looks like I'm going to have a little bit of a halo there I need to fix. Right through here. Any mistake I make here is going to show up as something in the sky. So I'm going to get rid of that. All right. So I'd say we pretty much have our sky key. We're still going to have some problems with the cables are missing. And there's a bit of sign we need to, or roof we need to replace, but by and large this is ready to receive a mask. All right, so as you can see, I've got 2 layers going. I got my original just in case I need to retrieve something. I've got a second one that is really most of the foreground where I'll be doing a lot of my work. And I've cleared the sky. Now when it comes to sky replacements, let's say the director says we just want a little bit more activity back there. We want some clouds. We don't want it to be completely barren. You want to keep if you can, the luxury here, you want to keep the same general blue so that any spill that you have on buildings is going to match. So I can make a new gradient. Maybe that's a good idea. So I'll just put in a new layer here. And this will be my sky base. And I will do a gradient from color 1 up here to color 2. And let's see how that looks. Something from there to there. And then again, I have the wrong direction, but basically I have recreated that as its own file, so its own layer, so I could paint into that, or I could just add some clouds. You know, maybe grab some from a photo here, copy it. It's going to be too small. To some extent, you can scale up clouds quite a bit. Let's see what happens if I do some layer mode action here. Yeah, soft light seems to be working pretty good. Soft light is just giving me that information without actually changing the hue too much. And if it is, I can always swing this back. The little hue correction there. So flip that on and off. Yeah. So that's hot. I can merge it down. I'm going to merge it down. Feeling confident. Check in here to make sure it's not too soft or jaggy from my scaling of it. And it is a little bit. I can see some kind of artifacts in there that make it bitmappy. So I want to clean that up. With clouds, you might be able to do a blur. But I want to kind of keep my edges, so I'm going to try a median. And a median is something where you're going to lose the small noise, but keep the basic shape of them. And it looks like something like a 6 or so is working okay here. It's a little painterly. You know, maybe I go in with my favorite brush and just add some tops to some of those clouds. Just style it up a bit. And just for fun, I'll punch that up a wee bit. You know, start to get some of that action going. So don't worry about that later. Whoops. Contrails. So just liven things up a bit back there. I'll spend some more time on that later. I really want an ice cream cone now. I use that. Boom, 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 boom. Subliminal advertising right in the middle there. All right, other things we want to do. We got rid of our shadow. We need to paint this sucker out. That's going to be fun. And we need to add a new sign. Okay, so I researched some signs and I grabbed this guy. It's got the wrong lighting, sort of the right perspective. So I'm going to end up doing basically a perspective number, just like you guys did for the last exercise. So I would start by selecting it. The more accurate, the better at this point, but you know that there's going to be some editing to do after the fact here. So I'll copy it to the clipboard, close it, paste it. Right now it's sitting underneath my buildings there, so we can't see it. All right.
It's even correct size.
It's totally right for something that's sitting right in the middle of the road. Just add a shadow and we're good. So light direction's actually pretty good. Light quality, maybe I'll do some color correction while I'm here. Oh yeah, I feel it behind me, changing colors there. Let's see if it catches up in a second. I am recording this for you. So. All right, so I'm going to make my whites right, make my blacks right. That looks okay. The whole screen is a little blue and dark up there. So. All right, perspective on this is going to be a little bit hard. I should or could start drawing in my perspective lines like we did over there, but I've kind of got two really good guides here, and I've even got the original sign, so I think I can probably do this just by pushing and pulling. The sides and the bottom are going to be wrong. I'm just focused on getting the face of this right, and then I'll fix the the sides rather. The towards camera side. Okay, so I'm going to Command T for transform. I'm going to right click inside to say distort, and then I'll start doing basically a corner pin here, getting it into place. I'm going to watch the scale of it too. It's got to be something that fits. Okay, so you can see how that my top is lining up, but my bottom isn't, and neither is particularly perfect. So I got to get my scale right. And then my sort of general position up here can come down a bit. Straightish, straightish. Okay, I think anything else that's wrong, I could probably correct. It's pretty big. It's pretty big. So I could argue that I could or should shrink it a bit, maybe 20%, just to make it more like the one that's here. But if I make it big enough, then I don't have to cover up my old one. I could conceivably even use the sign's shadow as a reference for what my shadow is going to need to look like, where it's sitting there for real. Okay, so that corner's good. This corner needs fixing. And it's definitely a push and pull. That's not bad. I do feel like the logo got a little squished here, so I'm going to try and stretch it a bit. Get some of that back, and now the corner needs to go down. I say okay. All right, so aside from the little rise here, the rest of it looks pretty good. So, really sorry about the projector. At this point, I kind of need to keep going. So I'll treat this element separately. Just Command T and get that going in perspective too. The right click for distort, and stretching, scaling, and perspective changing until that looks a little closer. Technically, I think we should be looking at the bottom side of that sign. If we look at anything, that would be cool. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and fix this fucker. And I do say fucker. All right. So we've more or less got our sign in. I think I'll try to take some elements from here to finish this shadow off quick while we're thinking about it. I think this is more, you know what? I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to try to color correct this area to match this area. I'm going to be a little bit more careful with my selection. This is where maybe the pen tool might be a better choice. But so while that's selected, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to levels it, and I'm just eyeballing it to try to match this stuff over here. Looking a little red. A little bright, or dark rather. Needs a little bit of blue. You can see that it's also a pretty sharp shadow there. Well, it went a little too far, but it's okay. It would look weirder if it didn't have it. Okay. Things we said we were going to do. Let's deal with the. Let's deal with getting rid of the barriers here. And I guess I have to close the door after all. It's too bad. So maybe we get some air in here. All right, this is ugly. There's no great way to do this. But we're going to end up making a patch through here of stuff. And we have to think a little bit about where our shot goes to. So let's take a look at that again. We make sure that the... All right, so we do have a bird shadow that comes through. I think we might be able to get away with missing that. But looks like as long as we don't go much farther forward than that, we're okay. So, dealing with this, boy. Sometimes I like to, let's put this on its own patch in case we make any mistakes. going to be quite a bit of stuff going on here. There's our little by itself patch. And I'm going to actually just come in with just color here for a bit and see if I can do it without fancy cloning. You know, as long as there's some color variety, it'll be okay. Because it's when you start cloning, I guess it'd be kind of hard to do, right? Cloning in perspective like this, that's way too blue. Alright, and then I might come in and just put a little, use all layers. Stamp tool, all layers. Get some variety of color in there, it's still there. This is probably not the perfect brush for this because it's semi-transparent. But for blending, would be just the thing we need. Because once you get into areas like this here, you can see that the sidewalk is so kind of blown out. But as long as we've got the right color, it'll be okay. Like through here, there wouldn't be much that we could clone. So do a lot of that, and then once I feel like I got something, I come in with a little bit of, and maybe even not 100% opacity, just to sample some noise over here. All right, let's try and do this section. So when I'm doing like a straight line, I'll click and then I'll hover over the area where I'm about to start painting, and you can see the line up there. I know that when I come back in, now I want my 100% opacity, by golly. If not to put it up too high. You can see how getting not necessarily a better result for about the same amount of work. So it seems like, well, it's not going great, but we take a step back and we see that in context that's going to be just fine. One thing about the clone that you'll want to watch out for is when you get some kind of very repeatable, you can see the little error in the painting here. That's something you want to try to avoid. Yeah, see, just as good off doing it by hand. That does sort of insist a certain amount of success with your brushwork, though. Boy, you really did that job there. Okay, and so on. But you can see where I'm headed with that, before and after. Canceling out the information we don't want. You know, maybe for the doing the fire hydrant here, it might just be as easy as color correcting this one to make it red, or hand painting it. Let me show you a painting technique that might work. I'll do it on a separate layer, and I'll sample my red color, and I'll set that layer to, I think it's color. Let's find out. It's definitely getting the hue, not necessarily the value of that. Now it's pink. Let's see what happens if we... Yeah, it's coming along with a lot of that color there. I can check multiply. Too dark. Okay, so Well, none of these are going to work. Failed. Next choice. And I guess we got a B on the layer here. Might even be able to select by color range, but I need some pretty dark shadows here. So. And then with the marquee tool, I'm going to exclude that. So I want to change that color. All right, so there's my stuff there. Let's just try a little hue spin, see what we get. Pick whatever color I want. That's not too bad. Just run with that. Yeah. You can see the little spill. It's happening from my not quite good selection. This is a, we're getting close here, you can see that this is actually part of the classic problem you get with JPEGs, where I might have selected perfectly, but JPEGs blur and blend color in such a way that you know, we ended up with a halo there. That's not better. Do want that. I think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a marquee selection over this, the square one. Let's go like this. And I'm going to just scale that up over it. So I'm using plate color, but going over the bad spot. That's better. Okay, so a lot of effort there for something that no one's ever going to see in the shot. Let's put in an amusement park. That's kind of the next hardest part. Finding a good reference might be tricky. The lighting's going to be completely different. I think that's a pretty good shot of the. Yeah, maybe that one's better. I like the Ferris wheel on this one, but it's got a lot of stuff, and this guy's going to throw off my scale. If I shrink this, he's still going to be like a 12-foot tall man back there. So I don't like that. So I should probably prep this in advance so that it's ready to go. And in this case, I'm going to do another key. So I'll do levels on it. So we get nice dark foreground. Something like that. We'll invert it. We'll start filling with black. I'm sorry, with white now, because we've inverted it. Black. So now here's where some of those little tricks that we talked about, where we can use that burn trick. I'll show you that in a sec here. All right, so here we have some stuff that didn't quite get selected right. Let's get on to fixing that in the following way. We'll grab our burn tool. We'll set it to start with shadows, because we don't want the highlights. That's going to darken the whites. We might not want midtones, because that could darken our anti-aliased edges. So we're just going to hit, yeah, just the darks. And because we set it to shadow, just the stuff that's kind of low goes, and we didn't have to worry about being accurate with our brush. We just rub right over all the white stuff, and the white stuff stayed. And the inverse of that is true on the dodge. If we say highlights, dodge the highlights, we come back in and we can push this stuff, anything that's not quite there, without having to be accurate. We could even do that up in here. It's only affecting the whites there. Okay, so once we got that, we'll make a selection, we'll copy it. I'm just going to do it in a destructive manner. And I pasted it in somewhat of a weird spot there, so let's get it back behind the world. And now we're going to need to do quite a bit of scaling and flipping and stuff. So I want it to face the other way. I'm going to flip it horizontal. I'm going to scale it. Try not to have it go off camera. I'm going to try to locate it in an interesting way so that the horizon still matches. Low resolution at this point, but that's okay. I just wanted to imply some stuff back there. Now I don't know how tall the beach is, but this is kind of where it feels like it ought to be. And I'm gonna say what? Let's treat this separate. Move it on its own so we can get a more interesting composition. There we go. That's awkward. It's awkward because it lands right at the edge of that, so I'm gonna actually move it more. There. And deselect. All right. So it's back there, but it doesn't look like it belongs there because it's actually darker in contrast than the buildings that are in front of it. So again, one of our classic tools to tell us how far away something is lying to us. So let's get in levels. We are going to blue things up a bit and definitely raise that black point. So we'll raise the black point so it's fogged in a bit. So we look at the blacks here and the blacks there. That's a big difference. I still want it to be, you know, pretty bright, I guess. See if we can get some blue in there. And okay, too bad. I think the whole thing needs a desaturation too, because it's far away, and we should start to lose some of the color. You can really see that happening on this building here. There may not be much color to begin with, but what there is of it is definitely falling off, and it does still feel too pinky. Let me see if I can, in the process here, get some more blue. Spinning the hue wheel for that. That's not working. Let's get that set to 0 again and see if we can't. You know, actually, it's up against, let's try something. Let's try some different modes to see if we can get it to read as distant. That's not too bad. That's multiply. Let's try overlay. That's definitely wrong. It's cool. It's the ghost. So it's going to be one of these darks here. Too much color. It's too dark. And that's basically where we were before. So that's kind of interesting. It really takes some of the saturation out of it. But a little too drastic. So let's see if we can just do it with color. This is where that color overlay trick might come in handy. So we'll go color overlay. And it's still set to my old one from the last time we did this. So it's pretty close to the right color. Let's get that closest sky color there. And let's not set it to soft light, but multiply. And now we can have it as a dial in control. That looks good there. Okay. So now that feels like it's back in there where it belongs. If I wanted to further emphasize that, I could put some of the missing cables back in, but you know, they're kind of there already. Tell you what, just so I can see what I'm doing, I will take my original up to the top, and I will paint on a new layer some all original cables here. It's going to be hard because they're very tiny. I also need to make sure that I've very much polluted my color, like I just did there. And I got to pick the right kind of brush. I think I have the wrong one there. So I want a brush that doesn't shrink at the ends. And technically there's a sag in all of these, which I could try to draw. You may find that that's really hard to do, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them perfectly straight, like this. Oops. I'm just holding down the Shift key to get that. And then once I have it selected, I'll hit Command T, and I'll hit the Warp tool. And we'll just sag them like that. We don't have to start from scratch. So drawing curves is hard. Okay, if we were to turn that off, you can see some stuff there. It got a little jaggy because of the interpolation on it, but it's okay. So you can do a better job of that than I did. The other thing would be to, if we didn't need a sag in them, like this one seems pretty straight, I could just, with B for brush, and get the right size up, click once over here, and figure out where it goes, and click once over there. Makes it look like it's definitely The cables are there, definitely in front of the Ferris wheel. So at that point I'm done with him. All right, let's look at comping this now, since that's kind of the hardest part. I would need to finish this, but by and large I've got what I want. Now, if this were animated, I would need to deal with things in a slightly different way. But the only live action section we have is this car coming through and the bird. So we're going to have to deal with those guys separately, but otherwise this is essentially ready to flatten. So what I usually do is I'll save it as a PSD. So I'm just saving all my layers, and then I'll merge them down and save as something else. And it could be a TIFF, or it could just be a numbered version of the same thing. Just so I have it as a single layer, because I don't need any of these layers for comping, probably. Because everything I'm going to put is going to go in front of it. Okay, so then we're going to pop on over to After Effects. That'll take a second to open, for several seconds. So this is going to be a patch of video on top of the still, or vice versa. It depends on how much video imagery I have versus how much still imagery I have. So I'm going to end up bringing in my original video, this MP4. I'm going to bring in my TIFF, which has an alpha channel saved with it, as you can see from the thumbnail there. I wouldn't necessarily need that, but I can bring it in and honor that if I need it. So it might be nice to keep it. Let's see how this goes here. Okay, so we're getting a interpret footage on that TIFF, which says, do we want to pay attention to that alpha channel or ignore it? I'll choose to ignore it for now. Maybe we'll come back and deal with that. Then I've got my movie and my still. Those are the only things in here. So I'm going to make a composition out of the movie by dragging it to the thing there, to the little comp icon. It's a rather weird layout, but I guess I'll live with it. And then I'll put my TIFF on top of it just to see what's, see what I can see that's different. Okay. So you can see where we're headed. Something I'm going to do two things. I've got the car to deal with and the bird, which I've lost the bird. The car is going to be an easy thing to do, so let's do that. I'm going to label it car, which is going to really be all the traffic. And then I'll duplicate it, Command D, and bird. And the bird will sit on the way top, turn him off for now. And car is just going to get a quick mask. I'll just use the pen tool and select what I know to be live action. So I don't want to do anything over here. And I think it comes as far forward as that. And maybe there's some people back there walking. And they are all shorter than this sign here. So that's my live action piece. If I can hide my seam along the edge of a building, probably don't need to, because the photo is from the video. But here I see a little problem with my Ben Franklin. So I'll throw a couple more points in there just so I can accommodate it. And once I have that, oops, those points up. I'll change that to a square there. I'm just holding on the Alt key to do that. This little tool. Okay. So there is the start of my live action going in, and there's that bird shadow. Now there's some argument that you might use a soft-edged matte there, so you could feather that mask. I don't think I need to. Let's make sure that it doesn't cross over the seam, though. I don't think it does. Shadow's good. If in doubt, just pause. Make sure that your mask is covering the whole thing. So that's looking good. Next, I want to rescue that bird. I'm in a bird rescue kind of mode here. So for this, I'll find it, so something to reference it by. Okay, and I think we could probably just key this, but if we key it, we're going to have all this other stuff that's of the same or similar value. So I'm going to make a general mask here to cover Make sure that our flight pattern fits. Woo, a little tight there. Let me turn the mask off just so you can see what's actually happening at that moment. Yeah, just need to come down a little bit. Okay. This is the classic thing I love about After Effects is you touch the mask and you get everything. Or you have to click off of it in order to get a single point to select. Okay, so now we got that. So he's very tight by the sign there. Luckily he doesn't cross over it, I think. Let's double check. Getting page up here, frame by frame. Page down. Looking good. Okay. And now you can see why we wanted to keep the color of the sky pretty close. We didn't switch it to a sunset color. If it had, we would have changed the type of key here a little bit, or color corrected him. But I bet we can just now do, well, I bet even a key light would probably work because it's a blue screeny kind of blue. So I'll pick my screen color. And it's going to look a little weird, but I want to look at the matte to see what I'm actually getting. That's pretty good. It looks like I can screen matte, that's what I'm looking for. Raise my black a little bit, lower my white a little bit to kind of beef up that selection. I'm just going to switch it back to final result. So now we're not seeing the mask applied because I shut that off, but let's set that to add because it's normal mode, and that should give us just a bird. And if we were to then turn the other layers on, probably have a pretty decent looking bird flying over the scene here. If we kept it as separate layers, we could animate those clouds. I don't think we'd need it, but that would be a nice little trick. I'll show you that one next time. But this gets us to a movie. We can now render this and hand it in. What you might want to do for yourself is to do a before and after breakdown, like I did on mine. So you can show usually what the final looks like, and then you take off the add-ons. Anytime here? Here occurred, I'll say. Okay. Players occupied there. All right, so I show the before, and then I do a little quick wipe here. I'll show you how to quickly build one of those in here. So I've got, let's label this comp as final comp. Okay. And then I'll make a new one that's just the footage. Put my final comp under the footage. And we'll mask this on and off to show the before and after. Kind of got to decide when the best time to show the final is here, but I'm just drawing a mask on, a rectangular mask. And I'll set the mask shape there, and I'll whisk it off again. Easy way to do that would be to select one side of it and keyframe that. So now it'll go between original. Put in another keyframe here. Advance a bit. Grab that line. So there's my before and after breakdown. Effects, original, effects. And give me a movie of that. Maybe just the first 6 seconds of it. It doesn't need to be longer than that because we got a lot of excess here. It's always good to capture excess because as we found when we were scrolling through there, that it helped to have a frame way down the line because the flag sort of settled down. So it's almost always better to have more footage than too little. But this shows me what you have. Then you can just go ahead and render that. That's a Control Command M to bring up the render settings. And I think for something like this, we can just do a little MP4. So for that, we'll go to lossless. And you could also send it out to the render queue, but just change this to H.264. And you go ahead and crank that quality down. 70 should be okay. And either render it as a QuickTime, which I think is the best and only way to get it out of here. Put your name on it and upload that. That should, should be maybe 50 megs or something. For this week, and I think that might be all we're doing this week. Let me double check. And